Thank you so much for being here and sharing your story to help others. And my goal here with you today is to hopefully give you new ways of looking at your obstacles and at least one, although it'd be great if it could be more than one, just next step to actually taking action so that you can make positive change. So how about we just begin with you telling me what's going on in your life and what's standing in the way of you creating the life career business that you want to be leading.
Yeah. So I got laid off about 18 months ago,
Okay.
and I took an intentional sabbatical because I was given a really long runway of 1 year to just live my best life and travel and do all the things that light us up. And so that came to an end, and I hadn't found a new job yet. The hunt has been extremely daunting and exhausting because you're one of a gajillion people looking for work. In my industry, a lot of people have been laid off recently. And so, because of that, it's really proving rather hard to find a new job. And unemployment isn't exactly a lucrative way of living life at the moment. And so, I think maybe I'm standing in my own way. I've been known to let my fear get the better of me and potentially be frozen in next steps. I've gone ahead and had someone very talented update my resume, update my LinkedIn, worth every cent of my investment. And while it has brought me a couple of more interviews, I don't know that I'm standing out from the pack enough. And also, I'm not sure that it's proving to find me the next role. Unemployment obviously isn't forever, and I would really like to get back into the workforce. It's time. I'm very ready and I'm hungry for that next step. I think that millennial burnout that so many of us suffer from, I've definitely stuck in the rear view, and now I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and get back to it.
Okay. All right. Thank you for giving me some context there. All right. First, I'd love to talk about what it is that you are applying for, just to make sure that you're going in a direction that is actually aligned with who you are and what you deeply want. Because that could be the reason that we're coming up against some blockers is it's not the right path, and we need to be looking in a way more expansive way. But yeah, so what are you applying to? And then I also want to hear what you did during the year that you took off.
So I'm applying to roles in operations management, which is what I did before, both in pharma, where I was, and
Okay.
also in other industries where my skills are transferable because nothing I did was so pharma focused that I couldn't move it to a different place.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm looking for roles that are equal in level, senior manager or above. If the role looked interesting and it happened to be at a lower title, I still might have applied for it if it's something that excited me. But I really liked operations and I would like to stay in operations. I think that's an area that's fun. And I very much am not of the entrepreneurial mindset. I thought about starting my own company, be organized because I love to
Ah,
organize stuff. Um, I had a couple of clients. While it was fun, she doesn't want to sign her own paychecks. That's
mhm.
not the life I want.
Yeah.
I very much still need someone else to sign my checks and give me insurance and contribute to my 401k. I feel a lot of safety in that,
Mhm.
and I want that to continue. And so that made me realize that entrepreneurial endeavors aren't my jam. So yeah, that's where I've been applying.
Mhm.
What have I done in my year off? I have traveled a lot. I went to Scotland, Germany, Italy, Bali, Portugal, back to Italy, Iceland. I was just in Italy again, and I have plans to go to Egypt in November.
Incredible. Incredible.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was.
So, what is so funny about you saying you don't want to sign your own checks? You like the safety net of having somebody else being responsible for your
Not
paycheck.
safe. Yeah.
I actually feel the exact opposite. I had way more anxiety when I worked for someone else because I felt like I could be fired at any point. Because I had been let go 3 times in my short career working for other people. And I feel like when I am the one who is responsible for my financial and professional destiny, where the buck literally stops with me, while that is, of course, enormous pressure, it feels safer. So it's so fascinating how
Same.
find our anxiety is coming in. Okay, so you're feeling still lit up about the kind of work that you're doing, and you don't have a pull to do something that is on your own. Okay, so then it sounds like we're getting an interview issue here because you're getting those opportunities to get in front of the employers, but then you're not getting the yes. Is that correct?
Yes. And I would say that even getting to the interview stage, my ratio of applications to having a recruiter get in touch with me is extremely small.
Okay. All right. Good. So let's not good, but let's talk about that then. I'm also a big believer in never applying cold, always getting our opportunities through relationships. So
Yep.
talk to me about how you see networking and how you've tapped into your network for the
Um,
opportunities.
yeah, so I would say I've tried to predominantly apply to places where I know someone. Pharma is really big, but also very tiny. And so the cold calling thing or cold applying, I've tried to keep that to a minimum wherever possible. And I've used as many referrals as possible and utilized my pretty stealthy LinkedIn network and tried to apply wherever I could. If I knew somebody, I would send them a message. And for the most part, they had no problem referring me. The blanket networking around, I think, is not something I've done a ton of. I have a leadership position in the Healthcare Business Women's Association that offers me quite a bit of visibility
Mhm.
in that I am a leader of the Voices of Tomorrow, which is the Millennial Gen Z group and the Young Professionals group. And I've been running that group for almost 4 years. So I've met a lot of people through that as well.
Okay.
And that's also allowed me to grow my network and meet a host of people who have wanted to try and help me find new work.
Okay. I also see that you've worked for a very long time at your last job. And so have you really gone through all the people who've come through that last company? And I know you're hesitant to do any kind of cold outreach, but you do have that company in common. So I'm curious if you've done any outreach to people who've worked at your company in the past and where they've moved on to. That could be an inroad to getting an introduction.
In some instances, yes, but not tons because the roles that I've been looking at, like even if I were to go back to my previous employer, like I have used a referral for those wherever I could, but just cold reaching out to someone who was also at my company who I may not have interacted with, I haven't really done much of that. No.
Okay. And that's fine. I just wanted to check. Okay. A couple of things. Sorry, I checked out your LinkedIn. I would say a B plus. Here's how I would give you some feedback on it if you don't mind. The first thing that I'm noticing is no quantified impact. And you being in operations, it's pretty obvious to me that you had a great impact on the business bottom line. I don't know if offhand you can think of anything, or you might need to do a little bit of digging. The point here is how did the work that you do save or make money for the company? And if that's not obvious immediately, then it would be, all right, how did the work that you do impact another team or department that directly impacted the business bottom line? One way to think about how to articulate it in a compelling way is to imagine if you had to be in front of the board of advisors for your company and defend to them about why you should keep your job. The defense, the case you make, it would always be about money, right? And that's how they decide who they keep and who they let go, who they downsize. Make that defense to me. Just right off the bat, instinctually, can you tell me how you made or saved money for your last company? And by the way, it's not just money in terms of dollars, it could also maybe be time, right? How did you make processes more efficient? Because in that,
Yeah.
what did impact the business bottom line? So, what might you say right now to me in this moment in response to that question?
There's two things that come to mind. I always stayed within 1% of our assigned annual budget, which is a clear money thing. We're not overspending. And the second thing is I would talk about saving time. I was in charge of all the compliance for my group, and pharma's intensely regulated. If scientists are wasting time taking trainings that they don't actually need anymore, then they're wasting time that they're not in the lab. And so what I did was I organized our trainings better. I downsized where I could and made sure that there were no extra trainings being taken. And that was like a year-long process because while it is highly regulated, no one is telling you how to regulate it. So I had to come up with all of this stuff on my own and sort through what that would look like for Joe Smith and Jane Doe, who are taking trainings that they might not need anymore because they're not applicable to their roles. And I will say that all of this is really well highlighted in my resume with
Okay.
quantifiable numbers and that data that is a bit more specific that I don't necessarily highlight in the last job of my LinkedIn.
Okay, I would highlight that in LinkedIn. I also, everything you just said now was fantastic, and I would love to see it even in just your about. I would encourage you to also make a personal website, very simple, Squarespace, gorgeous templates, one page. Here's what I find, it's not just you, it's pretty much everybody. We use way more flowery language around what we do than we need to. And I hope you're okay with me just like calling some stuff out here because I'm going to give an example that I know everybody listening or watching, they're going to go, oh my gosh, I have this on mine too. Okay. I thrive in a fast place, roll your sleeves up and get the job done environment. Okay. Anyone can say that. That's a copy and paste. I want you to say that through an example. So we're going to show and not just tell. Because when you give me an actual example that demonstrates it, that brings it to life, I go, oh my God, I can visualize be in this job. And also, she's not saying the same thing that everybody else is saying because her example is quite specific to her, but it demonstrates the universal that you're trying to make here. And you can do this in just bullet points, right? So, based off of what you just told me, we'll take this transcript and you're going to see, there's probably 5 bullet points that you could have made out of that transcript, each bullet point detailing out an aspect of not just what you do and why it's important, but also how you do it. That's what people want to see. I think we all need to take a step back and look at our work like case studies. You have done X, Y, and Z things that were projects. Put it out there with a nice, beautiful visual. This was the challenge for the company, what the goal was, why it mattered, what was at stake. Here's what I did. Here's how I did it. And here were the results, quantified and qualified. Oh, and let's take it to the next step. What did I learn? How did I use these learnings to make me better at my job? And all of this needs to support, I think, a really big thesis statement about what you bring to the table in operations. And again, it's not just the I thrive in fast place. I work with a highly matrixed organization. Like, again, these are good starting points, but it's a bit jargony and it's a bit copy and paste. I think you have, not just you, all of us, we all have a certain kind of ethos, point of view, method, personal brand, so to speak, that we bring to the work that we do. And I really want you to define what that is and then express it through these examples. And also, by the way, these examples, it's storytelling. That's what engages people. It's not the talking around the thing. It's just give it to me. Bring me back to that moment when these scientists were about to waste a bunch of time and I stopped in and I said, let's make this process more efficient, right? All of us, doesn't matter how maybe like dramatic or compelling it might seem to you, it did matter. I'm speaking as a business owner right now. When I had a team, and now I work by myself, but when I had a team, every moment that I had my team do something, it was a financial gamble, right? When they're doing a certain thing, that means they're not working on something else. So that means everything that you did was an investment for the company. So I want us to pump up the drama a little bit here and make it compelling for people to read. So it's not just, okay, another operations person. And it's hard to do on your own, of course, because we're all too close to ourselves. But hopefully I gave you a couple of bullet points, some prompts that you can get started with. What's your sort of initial instinct back to me when you hear all that?
It's so interesting because I think I totally hear what you're saying, and everyone has a different view of what it should look like, right? Like I paid someone to help me with my LinkedIn, right? And it was okay before. It's clearly okay now with a B plus,
It's
right?
probably better than it was. I'm sure this is much better. I just have a certain point of view on LinkedIn that's personal to what I think
And
stands out to people.
I would agree with you. And I've never spent so much time on a platform ever, ever, right? And now that I'm trying to use it to find my next role, like I hear what you're saying. I think my immediate response is this is going to be a struggle to redo for myself, not because I'm not capable, but as you said, I know myself.
Mm-hmm.
I know what I'm good at, and I think that, or I've always thought that once I get in front of someone, I can wow them, right? Every interview I've had with a hiring manager has been great. I literally had a perfect stranger say to me, "Your resume is incredibly impressive. I really needed to hear about your time off. I think it's admirable and commendable." We were on the phone for less than 10 minutes. And he said, "I'm going to shoot it to you straight. There are other people who have more experience than you do in the commercial side, which is what I really was looking for. But I really had to talk to you. This is not a no, it's a maybe."
Mm-hmm.
And I've had a lot of conversations that I've walked away from feeling like, okay, this felt good. Like we connected, we had a good conversation. And I've never had any feedback that's, nope, I think you're an idiot and you can't do this job. The feedback's always been, this is a highly competitive role and we've chosen someone else who aligns better to X, Y, and Z, right? After those conversations. So I've always thought that I could talk through these things well face to face, right? But on paper, it just looks different. If I had to define myself right now when a hiring manager asks, I'm very much a people person. If I can help you get your job done, I feel like I've done my job.
Wait, stop right there. That line, great opening sentence for your about.
Okay, I'm noting it.
Yes, great opening sentence. Couple of other things so that you don't feel too overwhelmed. Go ahead and take your, if you can find it, like a dream job description, if there is one out there, or create your own by combining a couple of job descriptions you've seen that each has an element that you really like. Based on those job descriptions, I want you to reflect back on your career. What case studies, and again, I use the word case studies, it could be initiative, project, or whatever, thing that you did that is a great example that would support that job description, right? Okay, now you have them in your mind. You're going to pick, let's say, 5 things. Based on those case studies, you can write them out with just the first sentence of why did this matter to the organization? Okay, so this initiative that either you self created or was given to you, there was something at stake for the company. That's the context. You begin there. Then it's what did I do? Okay. Then how did I do it? And this is where you can really speak at length and then you'll edit it down. All the qualities that you brought to that case study, the patience, the empathy, attention to detail, the research, the outside the box thinking, but don't talk around it. I want you to give actual concrete details. And then what happened? And try to think as micro to as macro as possible. So, what happened directly because of it? But also, was there a domino effect to it? Did what you did in that case study now get implemented in other ways, right? How did your department affect another department? And then take the biggest step back. How did this change at all, if at all, the way that you view your job? Okay. How you do your job, what you want to do in your career. This is going to be a lot of like cover letter interview type stuff where you're marrying together the threads of various different jobs and initiatives you've had. One thing you do always leads to another. In the moment, you don't feel it, right? Because you're just focused on getting it done and maybe even just surviving it. But it did inform you in some way. And so do take time in that as well. I don't think these things need to be more than, I'm going to keep using the number 5 here, but that to me is about 5 sentences
Yeah.
at most. And you're picking the best examples. I've worked with so many people on this stuff and they just want to give me everything and they don't realize the more you show somebody, the less focused you seem. And also it's very distracting. So really edit it down to out of all of the things I could talk about, which ones represent the best of what I want to convey. And of course, working backwards from these dream job descriptions that you've cobbled together. And again, less is more. That's another thing I'm seeing on your LinkedIn. I know you're telling me the resume has all the stuff, and you probably want to do a bit of a copy and paste from your resume with those quantified bullet points into your LinkedIn. But
Okay.
even about it being just a bunch of sentences all at once, get some space between sentences, right? Use bullet points. It's just people aren't going to read it. They're just not. So I don't, not to say that you need to redo the whole thing, but just really make sure that every word counts. It's very much human. 1 second. Yeah, so less is definitely more. You also probably, after you do this exercise, go check out, if you haven't already, other people in your space just to see what their LinkedIn's look like. I do want to talk to you though about creating content for LinkedIn, which a lot of people have feelings about. They roll their eyes. They're like, oh God, another thing I have to do. A, are you posting on LinkedIn? B, if not, how do you feel about that? And then we'll get into ways in which I can get you hopefully excited about it.
Okay, but before I answer that, can I please ask you a question?
Please.
For the part that we just discussed, is it that you think it's important to do that for every job? Because, hi, I'm 38. I've had a lot of jobs. They are not all on my LinkedIn or on my resume anymore because they're not applicable to the
No,
roles I have.
don't do it then.
So, okay, so is it really just going back like one or like last job and job prior to that and doing what we just discussed more so than going all the way back?
Yeah, I think for you, you're in a bit of a different boat because you were at your last company for almost 12 years. So
Yeah.
to me, all of your case studies are from your last job,
Okay.
unless you had a job before that is somehow relevant to what you're applying for.
No.
For most people, their resumes in general should probably only go back around like 10 to 15 years, but
Okay.
that's a little bit personal.
But the descriptive piece, right? Like these 5 bullets, all that, is that only really applicable for the last job I had, which is really the kind of job I'm going for
Yeah.
next?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
perfect. Okay, to answer your question, yes, I've been posting on LinkedIn, right? Partially my Healthcare Business Women's Association content, my HBA stuff. And then also I titled my last chapter The Gift of Unexpected Unemployment, my GOO chapter, if you will. And I posted a lot about that. Partially my travels, partially my gratitude, and then also my viewpoint. And I am working on a bit of a memoir journal. Let's talk about the time that I've had in the last 18 months deal, what I've learned and what I am taking away from it. So yes, I have been posting on LinkedIn, a little bit less so now, but most recently just to say to my network, hi, I'm looking for a job and this is what I do. And if there are things in mind, please keep me in mind. Upbeat, pleasant way. And people have come to me and been like, B, like this is inspirational. I'm into it.
Awesome. I'm going to now blow that one up.
Great.
I want you to really share things that are detailing out what you bring to the table, but filter it through how does this bring value to somebody reading it? So it's less about you and more about them. So of course the post of I'm looking for work, etc. That's fine. So what I like to do in terms of content that I put on LinkedIn is I really think about who am I speaking to? Who do I want to appeal to? So in your case, you're working backwards from, all right, the hiring managers, but also maybe people on your team that you'll be working with and some peers, right? Brainstorm what are things that they, and it wouldn't just be they, it's honestly you, right? What would you want to read in your feed that could help you do your job better? Okay. And when I say do your job better, actually your operations job. So it's
Right.
not, I know you're appealing to a recruiter. We're not talking about doing the recruiter's job. So when you think about how do I help somebody do this job better, right off the bat, does anything come to mind? Just one post that you might write, a short post that could do that?
Honestly, no. I
Ah, interesting.
this has never been suggested to me ever. And I think when you look at LinkedIn, depending on the industry you're in,
Mhm.
like your LinkedIn looks very different. I think in the pharma world, you just get a lot of abstracts and what people
Mhm.
are working on, less so than what you're describing from somebody like myself, which I have no opposing thoughts on doing that. I just honestly have no idea what that would look like at
Okay,
all.
cool. All right, let's dig into that then. Because I'm thinking about you, like you should be a thought leader when it comes to operations. I see you got an MBA, right?
Did.
Yeah, like you spent money and time, blood, sweat, and tears doing that. And shout out to Simmons in Boston. Let's go get your money's worth. You've learned a shit ton. You bring a lot to the table. People should know about it. And it shouldn't just be, oh, once you interview me, that's the point in which I can share my story. No, let's get you sharing your story now. And whether or not, I don't know if you ever feel comfortable being on a panel or hosting a keynote.
I've done it all.
Okay, okay, good, good. You really should lead the industry in this. Imagine that you might even write a book. I know you're writing the memoir, but imagine you're writing a guidebook for somebody who wants to enter your field What do they need to know in order to kill it at their job? You can write this. I know in your mind, as of this second, maybe you can't think of like your first post, but if you're telling me that you feel like confident at your job, you can do your job and you can do it really well, then you should be able to explain to people how to do that. And then you're cutting it up into like short, punchy posts that make people want to connect with you. That way, when somebody Googles you or looks at you on LinkedIn, there's a thought leadership, a body of work there that's not just, hey, get in touch with me and then I'll tell you. No, we're putting the story out first so that they want to contact you to actually pay you, okay, to hire
Right.
you. So I think the creative, and by the way, the fact that you're not really seeing people do that in your industry, to me, I'm even more excited to hear that because you're going to stand out and you're going to get even more comments going, wow, this is so refreshing. And hopefully you'll start inspiring other people in your industry, in your line, in operations. They should do the same. You all should be making each other better at what you do. And that goes to everybody listening, no matter what you do, pay it forward by helping other people be better at their job. Okay. That's bringing value to them just as much as it's getting your name out there, right? That visibility. And it's not, again, it's not a sob story. Not that you were doing that. It's not, I got laid off, or it's not update related because those are
Right.
few and far between. It's something that you can use consistently. And as any brand marketer knows, which now we all have to be in the business of marketing ourselves, any brand marketer knows the key is consistency because when somebody sees your name over and over again, it gets embedded into their subconscious. And then all of a sudden people are sending you opportunities and the cold outreach doesn't feel so cold because you've been in their, not in their inbox yet, but in their feed, right? Your name is popping up. You're familiar to them. And this works guaranteed. It really does. It works obviously for me when I post things. I get clients that way. I don't understand why it wouldn't translate to somebody who's full time. You getting interviews, you getting connections. So I'd love to do a little bit of a thought exercise with you in regards to that kind of content, because it is so important that you have a handle on being able to describe what you do. So when you think about, and we can begin maybe with an example from the past. This might be one of the case studies that you highlight. Something you did that you're extremely proud of that you think really well represents. Now my cat is trying to get
I
into.
can see that your cat is really excited to get out. She
This
wanted
is
to,
just what we're doing today. Give me 1 second. Okay.
yeah.
Coaching with Claire's cat. There we go. Okay, so when you think about this case study, something you did, you're very proud of, it really well represents the best of what you can do and what you want to do moving forward. Anything come to mind?
Ooh,
Doesn't have to be the very best, but just something that you're like, dang, that was really good.
I worked on a team of 3 women and we revamped our entire plan, process, pillars, and how we were going to communicate to our department of 150 people going forward.
Okay, great. All right, so we're going to start there. Let's turn this into a post. And by the way, every time you think of a post, you could probably make it 3 posts. We oftentimes write way too much. We try to put it all in one post. Nobody
Right.
reads. Nobody reads. I would much rather this be a couple of sentences and 3 posts. Okay. But let's think about the first thing we might say. What was really hard about that experience?
We were starting from scratch
Okay.
and we had really very little idea of how we wanted the department. None of us are in communications, right? So it was a scientist, another ops person, and myself.
Stop right there. That sounds like the beginning of a joke. What a great opening line, right? An ops person, a scientist, and a whatever walk into a bar kind of thing. So a funny opening. Okay, so the first post could be about how do you tell me it's like this thing we've never did before. So say it again to me. What was really hard?
We had no communications experience, a scientist and an operations person and myself. We had no guidance, no plan, and no idea what the department really desired.
Great. Okay. So already I'm compelled. I'm like, it sounds like they're set up for failure. Okay. So we're just, maybe it's like what to do when like you're not set up to succeed or something. By the way, guys, for everybody listening, that's universal. So even though B and I are talking about something that at first glance seems quite specific to your operations and the industry you're in, nope, these lessons, every single person can get benefit from hearing this. And that's what's so wonderful about sharing content. You really can impact way more people than you even realize. And so when you think about this, what was, just to break it down even further, that was something that was really hard. What was the first step that you took that you remember to move through this challenge?
We took a massive step back. We
Okay.
had to understand exactly what the heck we were working with. And that involved spreadsheets, which are a love language all by themselves.
Okay. So I'm going to stop right there. The entire post could be about the importance of perspective, right? Taking a big step back. And we don't have time today to get totally into the weeds of what else that post could look like, but you already have an angle, and that's the most important thing. So a way I like to filter all of my content is what's the lesson here? What's the takeaway? And sometimes I don't know that right off the bat. I have to just start writing. I'm beginning with the, okay, there was this thing I did I'm proud of, and I start to diary it out. And then the lesson becomes obvious. Then that becomes the angle. Other times, it may be very clear to you right off the bat what's the takeaway here or what's the three takeaways. The other thing I heard you say that could totally be its own post, spreadsheets are our love language, right? I would also, and that could be it could be just one line, but it could also be the beginning of a post that then goes into some of the spreadsheets you've made and or how you taught yourself how to use Excel, or just go into a little bit more of the behind the scenes with that. It's showing your process. So it's not just saying, I do this, right? Again, that like showing, not telling. And it's just more engaging, right? Because you are not just showing and telling for the sake of it, but it's for the purpose of providing value to another person. You are helping somebody with that story. Another thing I would challenge you to do is just find a way at the end of the post, maybe to prompt people to jump in. Hey, like, what's your nerdy thing that you love that no one else gets, like the spreadsheet, for example? That's not going to work with every post, but if you could try to get people to comment, that would be awesome. Another great tip is to tag somebody who you know totally gets it. Shout out to Claire, my fellow spreadsheet nerd, or whatever, right? Because now that's coming up in my feed. I'm going to engage in it and bring my followers into your feed, so to speak. Another really easy, I shouldn't say easy, but maybe straightforward way to start your content is to give shout outs to other people in your industry, people you've worked with and people you haven't worked with that you'd like to work with, or people that you admire or who inspire you, or who think when you follow them on LinkedIn, they're good at putting out good content. So that's another way of coming up with something that helps others, because resources are great and you're tagging these people and getting into their feeds and bringing their followers to your page. I think this is a must for every single person now. And I know everyone's going, oh God, like I have to do this other thing, but you're already spending energy applying to these jobs. And if you're not getting the traction you want, then how about we spend that effort putting ourselves out there in a way that you get immediate feedback, right? You're going to get those likes, you're going to get those comments. By the way, if you don't at first, that's fine.
Yeah,
You need time to juice it up. You're also going to
right.
learn what content really resonates. You're going to start playing with structure and length. I just did a lot of talking. So what are your thoughts, if any, that you have for me based off of that?
I think you read my mind. It's another thing, but I think for me, perhaps this unintentionally goes into confidence, but why the heck does someone give a shit what I think about any of this? Right? The fact of the matter is, I'm a great human being, but I'm also just another ops person, right? There are plenty of us who do this job. Why is someone going to want to hear this on my LinkedIn versus something that you have to say when you're clearly an expert at what you're doing? You've got your book and your podcast and all the things, right? I hear you on that it will make me stand out and that it'll make me at the tip of people's tongues, if you will. It is just another thing to do. And I guess it scares me a little bit because it adds another level of vulnerability to an already extremely vulnerable, demoralizing process of
Yeah.
hunting for a job.
Yeah. I'm glad you said all this because you're so not alone in any of it. I think that there's a couple of things here. There's the time energy management aspect of it. So getting organized so that this doesn't feel like such a burden. And then there's the inner work. And so let me start with the more straightforward part of like logistics and how to make this easier for yourself on a day-to-day basis, I would start by just writing out a bunch of different case studies because you have to do that anyway for your LinkedIn and you're going to be talking about these things in your interviews based off of those experiences, starting, by the way, with the one that you just told me, which was excellent. Those are going to be the beginnings of your posts. So you're never doing this on the fly. It's not like you get up in the morning and you have to come up with a new thing. You're going to spend some time just writing out a bunch of potential ideas based off of things you've already done. And based off of those ideas, you're going to ask yourself, what's the lesson here to help somebody else? Okay. What's the lesson? I think when you take this out of you being great at your job and making it more about how does this help another person, right? It's going from self orientation to service orientation. You will not be as afraid to do it. You're not going to be in your head about it because I'm assuming you're going to be excited to want to help another person at least, right?
Always, always.
Yeah.
I never intended my gift of unexpected unemployment content to be inspirational and go mini viral. That was never the point. It was just like, hey, I'm going through this and I've totally shifted my perspective on all of it. And maybe this is going to help somebody else.
You can do that with every single thing that you have gone through and worked on. Yes, there's always going to be a layer of vulnerability, which is great actually, because I think when we exercise the vulnerability muscle, it allows us to now work through other issues like perfectionism, imposter syndrome, all
Right.
the other parts of ourselves that are protecting our authentic self from being out there because we're afraid of rejection, right? So when you're starting to exercise vulnerability in other ways, like these content posts, the kind of unintentional impact that then has, all of a sudden we're finding ourselves, I'm a little more courageous in other areas of my life. How did that happen? It's the small everyday doing a post or just and by the way, when I say small, never means easy, okay? But it means lower stakes, let's say, right?
Yeah.
You putting up
Okay.
one post is going to feel a lot less scary than you maybe going for a job or something like that. So
Right.
know that this is a muscle that you are working on, but you're not going to start with the most vulnerable posts ever, which by the way, it sounds like you already did when you talked about,
Clearly.
you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So now we're talking more about your work itself. It sounds like, first of all, if you're putting your work through the filter of how did I do this and how can that help another person, does it feel like that'll be a little less scary to do?
Yes, but also in the same breath, I would say it's a little bit harder to come up with ideas. Not impossible, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think the skill set that I've really honed is unique. Not that others don't do it, but me being in service of others sometimes is operations can be an extremely thankless job.
You should write about that. You should write about that because I'm also, first of all, you're going to get everybody in your industry, other operations people going, hell yeah, amen. Okay. So there's already that. Second, that is universal. I think there's a lot of other people. Shout out to my executive assistants out there or
Absolutely.
IT people. You're the people behind the scenes. It's like there's a woman that I just coached who also is or she's project management, excuse me. And she says she's like a duck, right? Gliding effortlessly above the water, but paddling furiously beneath it. So that in and itself is a post. To me, what helps another is anything that was a challenge to you that you didn't necessarily figure it all out because we're all a work in progress, but you did a thing to solve it. Okay. You did a thing to solve it. And so when you look back at your career, or let's just say the last few years, there are things that you worked on that no doubt you can remember that there was some sort of challenge. And by the way, it doesn't mean it was a challenge for you. Maybe it came effortlessly to you, but it was a challenge for your team. Okay.
Got it.
When you talk about how you did it, that provides value to another person.
Okay. I see what
And
you're
that
saying.
is what makes you compelling. I also want to just point out a little bit of a contradiction that you said, actually, which was a couple minutes ago, you mentioned, like, I'm just another operations person, like, who would want to hear from me? But then 2 minutes ago, you said something about you being unique. So where does how do those work together or not?
You presented me a conundrum, Claire, because you're right. I don't mean to come across as unconfident because I do feel that I'm very confident in myself and my abilities. And I do think that I convey that in my day-to-day life, be as a human.
Mhm.
But I think when we show up in the workplace, sometimes I get that imposter syndrome tinge. And I think that's where that comment comes from, right? I think I don't feel like I'm unique enough
Mhm.
because I'm not getting the interviews that I really thought that I would land at this point and not be like aggressively hunting for a job for the last few months and barely getting any interviews or getting anyone to talk to, right? And that just makes me feel like another cog in the wheel and maybe I am just not unique enough. So I think that's why the comments came the way that they did because I
Mhm.
know what I bring to the table and
Yeah.
I think any employer would be lucky to have me, but at the same time, maybe I'm full of shit because no employer wants to talk to me really.
Mm-mm. No, there's so many variables outside of your control. First, right off the bat, when I looked at your materials, I think you can do your storytelling better. That's so there is a cutting through the noise that needs to happen, and that has nothing to do with your actual work. Being able to tell your story is such a specific skill set that not everybody has, slash you're too close to yourself, right? This is why I get excited about what I do because I started my career in independent film and then went into marketing, all different kinds of marketing, and then I have this company of Ladies Get Paid and my book. It's all storytelling. So that just happens to be what I'm really good at. Am I really good at operations? No, terrible, right? Like I'm actually not very good at running a business. I'm really great at starting a business and then marketing it, but like operations, it starts to fall apart. So you have a skill set that unfortunately only really shines when you are hired. So that's
Right.
fucking annoying because you're like, hello, I can't exercise my skill set until somebody hires me. Now you're in this chicken and the egg. Like you're just, and
Yes.
the more time goes by being unemployed, the less time that you get to exercise what makes you feel confident about yourself. So totally valid. However, shifting your focus to getting better at storytelling, right? Storytelling for your LinkedIn and those posts, that will help. Do
Okay.
have faith in that. That will help. However, there is the other side of how can we be still confident when we are not getting the yes? We've got
That
to
is really
somehow,
hard.
yeah, I don't know if you read the newsletter I sent. Did you read the newsletter, by the way, that I sent out
Yes.
yesterday? Yeah.
Yes.
So to unhook ourselves from the hamster wheel of achievements, right? Not needing external validation to fulfill us. Let me just tell you right now, I'm a little bit full of shit because I sent out that newsletter and I kept pressing refresh on my inbox to see if anyone would respond to me. Okay. So of course, human nature, we want validation from others. However, it cannot completely inform our sense of self. I think you've learned that in your sabbatical. I don't know too much about what you experienced other than the travel, but there were things as you were traveling, realizations you clearly had about yourself.
Yeah.
So
My
I
job is the least interesting thing about me. That was the biggest realization I had. Be as a human. I think, I'm sorry I cut you off, but I think something that America has a sickness with is, oh, hi, I'm B. Oh, great to meet you. What do you do?
what do you do? Is that
You
not
know,
who
that's
are
always
you?
the first question. Anywhere else you go, anywhere else I've traveled to, no one gave a shit what I did for work. People just wanted to know who I was as a human,
That's
right? I love that I have this fresh perspective and it's given me that sexiness factor that I think is so important. And now it's okay, I have to go back to work because I have a lot of living to do and I need dollars and cents to do that.
yeah,
And I'm
I
not
think
looking for a sugar daddy.
I think just on one note on the when you aren't being employed to exercise those skills, I think the act of consistent content when you are going through these things you've worked on, what you learned, how that helps another person, that's going to keep your confidence up in the operation sense because you're continually and again, consistent content to me, if you could try to do 3 times a week, that would be excellent. And you've worked for long enough where you do have stories to tell. And by the way, it doesn't mean that all content is going to be about operations. I think you should absolutely pepper in anything that you are writing about for this memoir. And by the way, anyone listening who's, whoa, shit, I'm not writing a memoir. No need to do it. Just
Oh,
anything
no.
in your life,
Mm.
use this as practice to help articulate what it is you're trying to help people with, right? And help yourself with. And the act again of putting it out there, it's exercising the vulnerability muscle and it's reminding you of your work. Great. The other thing though is how can you continually come back to a core sense of self that is uninformed by these external factors that you have no control of? How can you still be okay with yourself? By the way, I'm not talking about money for a second, because if finances are really freaking you out right now, that's a whole other coaching session that we can do. We can talk about ways to make money, but also money mindsets. So, in this sense, I'm talking about how do you protect your sense of self from rejection, whether in the form of a no or just radio silence. Do you have a daily practice of finding that connection to that core sense of self?
Yes, so I have two. Shout out to my meditation teacher, Erica Polsinelli, who is absolutely the most incredible Kundalini meditation teacher ever. She has an app, Evolved by Erica, and it has changed my life. I meditate every single day. It keeps me really grounded and mostly centered. And the other thing is, my best friend gave me the best advice ever, which is that I kept saying that I was being rejected from all these jobs. And she was like, "You are not being rejected. These people don't even know you. They're judging a piece of paper if they even saw the piece of paper."
Mm-hmm.
And so I've completely reframed the way that I talk about not getting a job or not, or getting another email that says, "We don't want to talk to you." I just say that I got another no, because a no is not rejection. They don't know me. They're not attached to me in any way. And that was like life-changing advice. And she is in education. We do not have the same career path, but she's right. Rejection is so personal,
Mm-hmm.
and this is not personal. This
Right.
is this is a numbers game, or it's just not, your skills don't exactly align with what we're looking for, and we found somebody else, right? That's not, you're a shit bag and you can't do the job, right? That's not what it's saying at all. And that's how I was taking it for too long. And I'm not being rejected. It's just a no and a redirection.
Yeah. And also, there are so many factors outside of your control. By the way, like you could be the exact right fit, and then somebody's nephew needed to be hired. There's also the possibility, and a high possibility here, that they just saved you from a next step that was not right for you. That they could be correct in that you are not a good fit for us. And also, we are not a good fit for you.
It's a redirection, 100%.
So we don't know. Now, of course, it still hurts. We take a moment. I want everyone, when they go through rejection, to feel your feelings. I think the worst thing you can do, and this is coming from somebody who used to do this, the toxic positivity,
Oh
silver
no.
lining, don't jump to that. Like a reframe, fantastic. But if you don't take that moment to just absorb the shock for a second and feel your feels, it'll get stored in your body. It'll come up at another point. But I
Yes.
know I'm speaking your language because I'm
You
February.
are. I've cried a lot. January was the most depressive month I've ever felt in my life. I have cried so much and felt so unworthy on the job front, but I realized I'm not alone in all of this, and that was a big reminder for me. Like, misery loves company sometimes. And also, I just think having a really good network, finding yourself a coach, like I have a life coach, I have a spiritual coach. I think those coaches are really important. They know their stuff. They will help you get out of your hole, right? Like, you're not in this alone. Use your network, use your people. That's what they're there for. And if anyone's listening to this and wants to talk, like, please reach out to me. Find me. I will happily converse with anyone, anytime. Happy to. I
Mm.
love I love to chat and meet new people.
Oh my gosh, you're going to get so many people reaching out. Actually, they'll probably ask you, how did you pick your coaches? Um,
Oh,
yeah. Do you want to
actually,
speak
they
on that
found
for a second?
me. They found me. The coach I'm working with right now, she is in training to become a coach. And I
Okay.
actually reached out to her to rewrite my resume. And in turn, she was like, "I'm actually not doing that anymore, but do you want my life coaching services?"
Nice.
And my spiritual coach, my girlfriend that I've known since kindergarten, found her. And we connected, and I loved her vibe. And that was it. I think you have to meet somebody, even if it's just for 10 minutes,
Yeah.
know if they're your person or not.
Yeah.
And if there's no vibe, no hard feelings. Like,
Mhm.
there are so many coaches out in the world now
Yeah.
that you will find someone, right? But I also really like to go on recommendations of others, right? Like, my dear friend Ama Marfo introduced me to you. That's how I met you, Claire, and that is how I found you, because of
Oh,
her.
oh, good.
And I think that my trusted gang of peeps, they know other great peeps, and that's how you all find each other, and that's how the network grows, and that's how everyone should find their people.
There's just a couple of things I want to dig into before we wrap up. Creating opportunities for yourself. So first, I do think when you post your content and you're reflecting on the things you've worked on and you filter it through how to provide value to somebody else, you're going to feel great. But that's a first step. I think the second step is there a way that you can do your job without waiting for somebody to hire you? Okay, so one way I might imagine this would be pitching your services in a kind of fractional capacity. Maybe if you're doing that, they don't have enough budget to hire you. So maybe you don't want to do it, or maybe you do. Maybe you're willing to work for minimal money or something. I know you don't want to quote work for yourself, but can you create a project for yourself that gets you inspired? And I think you might respond to me and say, actually, I already have that because I'm working on the memoir, which I do want to go into in just a second because I think there might be something there also to follow. But talk to me a little bit about when you hear me say creating a job for yourself or being able to flex your operational muscles now without waiting for somebody to hire you. Does any idea come to mind of how you might be able to do that?
My mom would kill me for saying this, but
Now I
truth
want you
is,
to say it.
I have to say it now. So I live with my mom, which has also afforded me a lot of
Yeah.
opportunity. I moved in with her to save to buy a house, and then I got laid off.
Okay.
Nothing is an accident. But I'm a minimalist and I love to organize, right? That's how my father was. My mom is not like that. She has a lot of things, very
Mhm.
organized, but a lot of things. And so my organizational muscle is mom. There's so much organizing that can happen. And my mom's not retired.
Mhm.
She goes to work and I'm like, I want to do all these things, but it gives her anxieties. So that's been the biggest thing that I'm like tap dancing around. I could help my mom get more organized, which is operationally very important for me and would totally help her. That is the only thing that came to mind when you said that. But I don't approach it because sometimes she gets really annoyed, and so I don't want to make her upset. So I
Mm.
don't ever discuss it. But that's what comes up for me mostly is that I want to help my mom be more organized.
Hmm. Okay, so I'm gonna give you an idea just to show everybody and to show you my thought process of taking thing that's in front of you and turning it into something that makes you look good for a job opportunity. You could say, all right, I'm gonna do one room. I'm gonna take this one room in this house and I'm going to take pictures of the before. She would need to consent to this, of course, but we're going to take pictures before and we're going to take pictures of after. And I'm going to detail out in a post, let's say, or if I'm going to make a personal website, it's going to be actually one of my case studies of what was my process of deciding what should go, what should stay, or whatever.
Mm,
You'll figure that out. And I could see that going kind of viral. That wouldn't be the point to go viral. The point is for you to do something that exercises your operations muscle and inspires you in some way. But I also want you to use it to tell the story of what you bring to the table in your job. And this is
mm,
outside the box, right? It's not just another pharma thing. So I could see that hitting a lot of buckets right there. And I think we all have that. It could be somebody saying to themselves, I'm going to challenge myself for the next 7 days. Every single day, I have to force myself to do this thing I've been putting, whatever. We all can come up with these little projects for ourselves that both get us better at what we do, but also can be leveraged for content. I'm always thinking about how does this tell your story? How does this express more of not just what you do and how you do it, but who you are in doing it. That circles back to what you mentioned about being abroad and people asking you not what you do, but hi, who are you? I want you to showcase your personality, your style, and your ethos, your process as much as you can with what you're putting out there.
yeah,
So
that's a
I would
good
say
one.
that's a good next step. I want to talk quickly though about the memoir and what you experienced this last year. Again, I know that you said you're not entrepreneurial, you don't want to go in that direction, but you're clearly fired up about some of these realizations that you had in this past year. Your job being the quote least interesting thing about you or whatever. So tell me more about what you learned about yourself during that sabbatical and also January, when you said that month was really hard. I think our greatest lessons come from our greatest struggles. So let's start maybe with the happier stuff of the travels, what you learned, and then we'll go into January because I think that there's something there to dig in a little bit more to get to the core of who you are. Not to say you need to change what you do for a living. I want to be clear. I think you're excellent at operations, just your whole vibe makes a lot of sense. You worked for so many years at one of the top companies in this country slash world. Like, I'm not saying go out of that direction, but I want to start getting you better at divorcing the definition of self from job, right? Where these rejections, they really aren't going to affect you more than 60 seconds when you get them. But let's begin with travels. What did you learn about yourself?
I think it's important to mention that I've really been working on myself in my 30s very intensely. I think my 30s have been all about finding that confidence, falling in love with my body, doing all the things that matter as a human to make sure that you show up authentically in the world. That clearly came to a bit of a precipice and a peak, if you will, when I lost my job. And so the biggest realizations outside of my job is the least interesting thing about me. We live in a really small world. The world is tiny and there is so much to see and so much to learn and is an abundant resource. And because I had such a long severance of 1 year, and a mom who was so gracious, I really took the time to say, okay, where the heck do I want to go? What do I want to see? And who can I meet along the way? And I never would have traveled to Bali by myself for 24 hours on an airplane to go on a women's empowerment retreat and basically clear the negative cobwebs of my life and really start to rejigger and figure out who I am. Who is B, right? And I've learned I am a happy, positive, influential human being in the people that I am around. People like being around me. I bring a lot to the table. I am a great confidant. I'm reliable and trustworthy, and people do want to hear what I have to say, especially every time I'm like, oh, going here, going there. I literally just had a friend just say to me, I want your life.
Listen, everything you said makes you the perfect person to be posting on LinkedIn, right? Because you're talking about people wanting to be around you. This is a way to present yourself to them and they can engage in your lessons with you.
Yeah.
I'm curious also from what you learned in your travels, how did it make you better at your job?
Ooh.
And I know you haven't gotten the next job yet, but
Yeah, I
is
think
that you have to tie that together because that to me, that should be definitely a part of your about on your LinkedIn and a big part of helping you stand out for sure.
to be honest, I haven't given that a tremendous amount of thought. An interview question, I think that the biggest thing is that my confidence has never been higher. Like I've never felt more confident than I do today.
Mm-hmm.
And if you show up confidently in life, how are you not going to show up confidently at work?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And also, my cup is fully full. It is overflowing with energy and excitedness to start the next thing. I think that's a sexy thing to bring to the workforce because so many people are suffering from complete and utter burnout
Yeah.
and that mundane hamster wheel that
Mm-hmm.
we're all on, right? Like, I haven't been in that mundane hamster wheel in a hot second. I
Mm-hmm.
love that that is the case, right? Like I didn't realize how loyal and married to my work I was. I thanked my boss for letting me go. Who does that? I thanked her and she was like, "You're welcome." And ultimately, they closed my entire department. And so many of my ex-colleagues were like, "So what's your advice?" Like how the amount of thank yous I got for posting about all the things that I've done and sharing my positive perspective, not being toxic, being real,
Yeah.
right? Because I don't believe in that toxic positivity. I feel my feelings, all of them, whether they are nice or really gross,
Mm-hmm.
they should all be felt because they will come out at some other point, as you very well said. And I think that bringing my full authentic self to the workforce again in this way is going to be very refreshing for me. And I think that's what I bring to the table.
You got to make tons of content about this. You can, it's all in you. And you said something about you like can't wait to share this energy when you get hired. You have to share it now. You have to share it now. It's what will get you hired.
Okay.
It's what will
I
get you
really never thought about this. So you're giving me a very
good.
fresh perspective.
Another idea would be do a coaching session like I'm doing with somebody new in your industry and you're mentoring them and ask, can you record it?
Okay.
And just start doing like office hours every couple of weeks where you're like, hey, anybody who's like new in the industry, who you're just getting started, or maybe you're pivoting, you want to learn what it is to be in operations, especially in pharma or whatever, like you'll figure out exactly how you structure this so that you are continually getting yourself out there, both what you do, but again, who you are in how you do it. And it's
Mm,
not just, dear potential hirer, like boring, boring. Like it's
right.
really in a dynamic, creative way like this that's providing value to people now. You've said all the things to me that make me inclined to believe that you would be excellent at this and want to do it. So instead of looking at it as another thing to do, it's no, I'm literally getting to live out my values right now, which is sharing my real positivity about life. And then you have to tie it to what you do. You're in terms of your job. You have to marry those two as well.
Yeah,
That would be a
that's a
next step.
it's challenging.
Yeah, that would be the next step for you there.
Okay.
The last thing that I just want to do with you, it's more just for myself to see if this exercise resonates. Are you familiar at all with the downward arrow technique from cognitive behavioral therapy? Have you heard of it?
Yes, I've done the start of cognitive behavioral therapy for a few years ago, but no, I don't know that I'm to be honest.
Okay. Let's then I made this one up a little bit. It's inspired by this CBT downward arrow technique. And
Okay.
essentially what we're going to do is we're going to take like a core concern, frustration, or fear that you have, something that's feeling quite overwhelming to you, and then break it down into its smallest component that you can take an action step on. And this is an experiment because I've done it a few times with myself and other people, and it's worked, but we'll see. So just shut your eyes for a quick second. When you think of a major blocker in your life right now, what would that be?
Few things come up. My fear and my lack of money.
Okay, lack of money. All right, I'm gonna ask you now, why is that important? So the way that you're gonna respond to me is, okay, this is important to me because, so having money is important to me because, right? Because you said lack of money, but well, let's say it as having money is important to me because.
Okay. Having money is important to me because I love to travel. That costs money.
Mhm.
I
Okay,
love
just one thing.
having money is important to me because the things I love to do cost me money. Travel.
Okay. It's important to me to travel because.
I love exploring new cultures.
It's important to me to explore new cultures because.
I'm not alone in this world
It's important to me to not be alone in this world.
because I'm a people person and I love being surrounded by people.
And then it's important to me to be surrounded by people because it's important to not feel alone in this world. Okay. So then
Yes.
we got to the end of it. All right. So it's important to me, just say it again.
It's important to me to be surrounded by people in this world, to
No,
not,
sorry. It's important to me to not be alone, to not feel alone in this world.
yes, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Alone in this world. All right. Now take a deep breath. Just sit with it for a second. Is this true? Does this feel integral to you?
Yeah.
Okay, fabulous. By the way, me too. This is one of my core values. Okay, so let's talk about some things that you can do to cultivate, achieve, or integrate this not feeling alone in the world into your life. So, just off the top of your head, what could some things be that if you did them, you would feel less alone?
I think I try to do them right. I am kind to everyone. You never know who you're going to meet on the street. Smile, be approachable, be willing to talk.
Is there anything more that you could do? I have a feeling you are doing a lot of these things already, but is there anything more?
I would argue that for the intents of this podcast, the one thing I could do more is incorporate this into my LinkedIn life because
Ah,
I'm not showing up as authentic, be the whole human there, right? I think not that my professional self and my personal self are completely different because they
mhm.
aren't. I'm only one human, but my Instagram sees a different part of me than my LinkedIn would. And while I would argue that I would never post a boudoir picture on my LinkedIn, there are aspects of my whole self, the confidence that it takes to post a boudoir picture for my followers versus the confidence it takes to start creating the content that you and I just talked about. I could do more of that for myself on LinkedIn because the personal B is also the professional B. So why can't they be more married and visible?
Yes. And that also answers your concern that you came in with of I'm just another operations person. No, you're not because no one is you.
No one
Um,
is. Yes.
Perfect. All right. So based on what you just said here, what can you envision standing in your way of following through? So all the blockers that are going to make this new content pipeline, like it's not going to be easy. It's a new habit to form. So what do you think is going to be in your way?
I stand in my own way in that I'm a creature that thrives in structure. And I think that it speaks to my operations brain. I need structure, right? Like for me to wake up in the morning, get my coffee, do my meditation, and then work out. Hey, prime example, today I got my coffee and I scrolled on Instagram for an hour. I
Yeah.
did not do my meditation. I did not exercise yet. I have not followed my own routine, right? And so for me, especially until I have this next job, creating that routine for myself is the thing that has stood in my way the most
Okay.
because that lack of routine, I just tumbleweed into, oh, it's fine. I could do that tomorrow. Or that has been the biggest blocker. And I think that has continued or could continue to be the biggest blocker because the busier I am, the better it is for me. And
Mhm.
so all this downtime, if you will, has not been helpful for my productivity in this regard. So I think I'm standing in my own way of doing exactly the things that we talked about.
So this is a game-changing question. How can you make it as easy as possible for you to take action?
Okay, so I do this with meditation. I have an accountability buddy.
Okay.
And for me, it's I can't disappoint you.
Mhm.
Claire's expecting me to post tomorrow. If I don't post, then I'm going to disappoint her. That that is problematic.
Uh-huh.
I can't do that. And it's the same thing, even though it's not true and I just made up that story. Like my friend, she expects a text from me every day that says, "Hey, I meditated today."
Mhm.
And if I don't send that after a couple days, she's like, "Are you alive?"
Uh-huh.
I don't like to let other people down. I have no problem letting myself down, but I don't like to let other people down. And
By the way, I don't believe that. I
I,
think you do have a problem letting yourself
I
down.
do. You're right. You're 100% right. But having that accountability partner is very helpful for me in these moments where I'm developing a new habit. And by the way, like this accountability partner for meditation, she's been in my life for 1 calendar year. I've been doing this for 1 calendar year, texting her basically every day to be like, I did my meditation. And she expects it. We've developed a deeper friendship out of that. That would be it.
Okay.
Accountability.
Accountability for, let's just say, content on LinkedIn.
Yes.
Okay. What's one small thing that you can do right now to get moving? Actually, I'm going to just answer the question for you. Okay, I'm just going to answer it for you. So if it's accountability, so I want you to think about who's the person who's going to be that for you.
Yeah, I have to think about that because I have plenty of friends who I can count on for something like this. But I
I
have
would
to
I would think
have,
about the person who also should probably do this. So if this is going to be a challenge for yourself, let's say you're going to challenge yourself for posting for 1 month and you're going to do X number and start small, by the way. Like I was saying, oh, if you could do every 3 posts a week, great.
yes.
Start with one post, but maybe think about a person who also would benefit from doing this with you.
Okay.
And so
That's
I
going to take work, but yes, I'll give that some thought because having that will benefit them and also myself.
And then my next steps based off of what we've talked about today for you, yes, thinking about a person who you can do this with, then map out some time on your calendar to do that content brainstorm where you're
That's what I was
reflecting.
thinking about.
Yeah. Yeah, where you're just thinking it, letting yourself brain go wild. So maybe even go for a walk and then just speak into do a voice memo, all the things you've worked on or experienced that you learn something and there can be therefore a lesson for somebody else. Then you
Yes.
have that full content brainstorm and then look at your calendar and say, what do I do every day without fail that I can habit stack this with?
Okay.
And then the smallest thing ever. It's not just write and post the thing because that actually takes a couple of steps. So maybe the next thing you do is just writing a really shitty draft and not posting it. Okay. So I would say
Okay.
those would be my next steps for you. I am so appreciative that you did this with me. You were fantastic to work with.
Thank
No wonder
you.
you have other coaches. Your roster is full, but I loved working with you. So and everybody listening, freaking hire B. She's a joy to work with.
Please hire me. And
Well,
thank you.
hopefully by the time people are listening and watching to this, you'll be like, I'm booked and busy.
I'm hopeful that's exactly the case, but thank you for offering to do this and for having me on. I appreciate it so much.